am absolutely certain that some sort of quantum chain reaction, starting with Hannibal Barca's failure to sack Rome in 216 BCE, inevitably culminated in Norman Finkelstein learning the meaning of the term gooning. This implies that there is a gentler universe where none of this happened, a world where Carthage prevailed over Rome, the syndicalists triumphed over Franco, and Oklahoma City Mayor David Holt never managed to swindle the city into funding a billion-dollar corporate giveaway disguised as civic. Pride. If I had that glove from the Marvel slop movie that allows you to change time or whatever, I would transport myself to the Italian Alps in a Fairchild Republic, a 10 Thunderbolt a second with a collection of AI-generated videos, featuring Stewie from Family Guy, explaining Serbian nationalism. I'm pretty sure Hannibal would get the message. This future must never come to pass. Rome must fall. Instead, I am stuck in the OKC cinematic universe, where an entire city's budget is gutted for the benefit of private equity ghouls, and the working class is told to smile and clap while David Holt and his corporate cronies extract yet another $1 billion from public funds for a basketball arena that barely 5.5% of registered voters approved. The universe where Gooner Fascism triumphed. What is Gooner Fascism? In 2023, the esteemed political scientist Norman Finkelstein went on a podcast and told a story about attending a Mars Review of Books event where the cultural critic Magdalene Taylor read an essay about goon caves. Gooning refers to a state of intense trance-like pornography consumption often described as an almost dissociative meditative experience where the individual entirely loses themselves in an endless loop of physical and digital stimulation. Gooning represents a sort of ultimate surrender to digital hedonism, to the point where pleasure becomes less about arousal and more about self-abandonment. In Oklahoma City, we have our own version of this phenomenon. The OKC Thunder is a civic religion where lonely men, deprived of purpose, find solace in screaming at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander highlights and declaring their undying love for Sam Presti's process. These men, stripped of economic stability, housing affordability, and any say in their city's future, are not allowed to ask why $1 billion was handed over to build an unnecessary new arena for a team that already had one. They are instead instructed to put on their loud city shirts and pretend that the city's decline is somehow a victory. The archetype of the OKC Gooner fascist. Many among the online commentariat have taken to drawing parallels between our current historical moment and the history of Weimar Germany. Historical comparisons are often misleading and always fraught with the danger of oversimplification. There are, however, two themes that define the Weimar era that seem increasingly to mark our own: desperation and decadence. In the Berlin Stories, novelist Christopher Isherwood describes the cultural world of the Weimar Republic, infamous for its hedonistic, avant-garde urban culture, particularly in cities like Berlin. He describes a world in which men are alienated by the trauma of war and economic instability and seek escape in drugs, sex, and nightlife culture. Many young men who indulged in this culture later became the ideological foot soldiers for fascism, not because they rejected self-indulgence, but because they yearned for discipline and order after years of personal decadence, economic despair, and social disillusionment. Oklahoma City's version of this phenomenon is the Thunder Arena Project, a masturbatory corporate venture that convinced a disaffected population that funding a billionaire's vanity project was an act of civic responsibility. The propaganda campaign surrounding this vote was so relentless, so all-consuming, that it functioned as a kind of civic goon cave, a place where reality ceased to matter, and all that was left was the bliss of submission to the process. David Holt's version of fascism isn't the traditional boot-stomping variety. It's the friendly fascism of corporate progressivism, where the same people who suppress wages, hand out sweetheart deals to private equity firms, and privatize public resources do so the rainbow logo and a self-congratulatory tweet about consensus. A consensus, in this case, that only 5.5% of voters actually approved. Enter the Thunder Gooner Fascist. Like all historical fascist movements, the Thunder Gooner Fascists are united against real democracy and worker empowerment. They see the masses as subjects to be manipulated, not citizens to serve. The economic study used to justify this project wasn't even conducted by a local firm. It was outsourced to a company from another state. A pathetic concession that revealed how little actual economic justification existed for this cash grab. These people, Holt, the Chamber of Commerce, and their assorted media stooges, don't actually believe in anything beyond the maintenance of their own power. They don't care if small businesses are priced out of downtown. They don't care if the city's working class is stretched to its limit by rising rents and stagnant wages. They certainly don't care that Oklahoma City is experiencing a manufactured boom that will, in the end, benefit no one except private developers and real estate speculators. What they care about is the thunder as a cudgel for control, a civic distraction, a corporate welfare scheme dressed up as community engagement. The new billion-dollar arena is not a necessity. It is a monument to the triumph of Thunder Gooner Fascism, a movement that demands absolute fealty to capital, cloaked in the language of fandom and community. A movement that has mastered the art of using sports as an emotional conduit to protect the interests of the ruling class. It is a future where OKC must never ask why it can afford another publicly funded arena, but cannot afford basic public services. A future where David Holt can parade around as a progressive while enacting the worst excesses of private equity-driven neoliberalism. Who will win the future, the friendly fascists of OKC or the people? It would be premature to declare the OKC Thunder Gooner Fascists as the definitive face of American fascism, but they represent a particularly insidious strain of it, one that operates under the guise of civic pride and boosterism. Will the nationalists turn on Holt when they realize his economic policies are just warmed-over Reaganomics with a social justice veneer? Will OKC's working class eventually realize that every dollar spent on a new arena is a dollar taken away from their future? Will the OKC media, complicit in this charade, ever acknowledge their role in propping up this scam? Or will we remain trapped in the OKC cinematic universe, where our only recourse is to scream at our TVs, hoping that this time the refs will actually call a foul in our favor? That schism is coming, and when it does, it won't merely reshape Oklahoma City. It will determine what kind of corporate-controlled dystopia we will be left with.